Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and decided to make a tea-themed card today. I've had a lot of people asking me if Honeybee would release a tea set, and they did actually back in the fall. I just tend to gravitate towards the coffee-themed things, as that's just, I don't know, it's just my bend, I guess. But this tea set is really cute. So this is the Tea Time stamp set, and I have some post-it notes here. And I just put a stack of 4 of them in my stamp positioner. I originally only was going to do some masking on this teacup image, but then thought I might as well stamp some of these other images and create masks while it's all out and ready and whatnot. So I fit several images then onto this little stack of post-it notes. And for the teacup, I'm going to cut all of them at once. And with these images, because they have such a nice thick line to them, I'm basically just cutting right in the middle of that line. So really simple. When it comes to masks, you either want to cut either right on the line, or preferably what I usually use, cut right inside the line. Or if it's an image with really nice thick lines, I kind of cut in the middle. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to mask the image. So for the teacups, I did the entire stack, and then for the little cupcake and this little lemon slice, I only cut 2 out just so I'd have extras depending on projects I want to use in the future. And I ended up creating other masks with those like large scraps of the post-it notes left over, because again, I had everything sitting out, so it's like, why not just have some masks made? And one of the great things too about having a bunch of masks is I can use them to kind of create whatever layout I'm thinking of. So for this card, in my head, I was thinking of creating a stack of teacups. So I have some distress watercolor paper here. This is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I traced the inside of the A2 double stitched frame wafer die. Again, just to kind of give me a visual. And by stacking up my masks, I realized I could fit 4 of the teacup images. And then I started laying out some of the other images that I had masked off as well, just to see how they're going to look if I wanted to create a little bit of a scene. So I kind of laid out this little croissant image and the cupcake and the little slice, and then decided to add that little tiny, it's the tea tag, but I thought it would just be cute to kind of add that as if it was kind of sitting there on the corner. So once I did that, I realized I didn't want to peel off all these masks because I liked how they're in place. It just made it's going to make it so much easier. So I just took a second piece of the same watercolor paper, traced out the inside of the die again, and then now I can start laying out the actual stamps. And when it comes to masking, whatever you want in the front is what you're going to want to stamp first. So for this, it's that little tag and the little lemon slice. So I laid those out in the same spots where they were with the masks. And now I'm going to use those masks to mask off these 2 little images. And then I'm going to stamp the cupcake. And the cupcake is going to look as if it's behind this little lemon slice because it was already stamped and masked off. So in the end, I didn't need the cupcake mask at all because I don't stamp the croissant or anything. But again, it's nice to have them. I can use them for future projects. So I laid out my cupcake, and I'm stamping everything with VersaFine ONYX black ink. And then for the stack of teacups, you have to start from the top and work your way down to the bottom, which you can see in the finished card. Is the top teacup is in the foreground, I guess, is how you kind of want to say it. Because otherwise it would look really weird if you just stacked from the bottom up. So I started with the top, and I'm going to mask that off. And rather than clean off my stamp and, not get any marks, especially working with VersaFine ink because it has a tendency to get everywhere, I used the packaging for the stamp set, just the backing piece of transparency, and I just put that over top of my work card front here, and then this way I can line up the stamp. I don't have to clean it. Any ink or smudges are getting on this transparency. So then I was able to close the lid after I'd positioned my stamp, ink it up, stamp it. I'm going to mask it again, and then I'm going to place that transparency back over it so I can move the stamp down. You don't need a stamp positioner for this. I was using it because I wasn't sure if I would need to re-stamp any of these images. I am stamping onto the smooth side of this watercolor paper, but when I'm working with thicker line images, I'd rather be safe than sorry. So I just kept going along, stamping the image, masking it off, putting the transparency over it so that I could move the stamp down, and then putting it back on the lid, removing the transparency, stamping the image. So this didn't take very long since I'm only doing these 4. And once I've got them all stamped, this all looks like a hot mess. That's the beauty of masking though. Everything looks messy until you remove the mask. And this is where I decided not to add that croissant. I think I had enough going on and it just wouldn't really be visible with everything else. So I decided to leave that off. And now I'm going to peel off all my masks, and that makes everything kind of come together and look the way it's supposed to look. So all of those masks I save. I just stick them to the backing sheet of the stamp set. So the next time I go to pull out the set, I have all these masks cut, ready to go. I can use them multiple times and save myself any other time or effort with those. And then I'm just going to wipe the ink off the backing sheet of the stamp so I can place that on the other side to keep everything protected. And then I can put that in its package and it's good to go. So for my coloring, I just super sped all of this up, but I'm using my Tombow markers. I did list the color numbers in the order that I use them. I don't know the names offhand. And they don't have names on the barrels. They just have numbers. So I did list those, but I kept the coloring pretty simple. I'm just laying down a bit of color with the marker and then pulling it out with my water brush. Really simple, really easy. I did the background first because I knew I was going to be using some pretty bright and vibrant, like a pink and a red, and I didn't want to accidentally like pull that color out when I do the background. So I find it's easier to do the background first and then add the color to all of the main images. So I was just adding the blue to like the areas right around where the cups were kind of stacked and whatnot, and around, you know, the corner of the cupcake there, and then I would just pull it out so it would fade to white. So really simple, really easy. And then once my background was done, I'm going to start coloring in all of the actual little teacups here. And all the colors, and actually the idea for this card was inspired by some pattern paper I'm going to use on the card. Just the little stack of teacup pattern paper was perfect. And the colors in it, just everything. So that's kind of where the inspiration came for this entire card. So I did a pink for the bottom cup, and then I mixed a couple of greens for the green one, and then I added yellow to the yellow cup. And while I had the yellow out, I colored in the little lemon slice there, and then I just added a little bit of lighter yellow to the center. And then I'm using a red for this top cup. And then once I'm done all of the actual cups, I'm going to add just a light brown for all the tea in these cups, and decided to add it to the little tea tag and to the base of my little cupcake. And then I use that same light yellow for the cupcake itself, and then just a really pale pink for the icing. So once that was done and everything is dry now, I'm going to use the actual die. The only reason I didn't die cut it in the beginning was I wasn't sure exactly where the stitch lines were going to go, and I don't like stamping and watercoloring over those very often. So I did all that, lined up the die, and I'm going to set that aside for a second while I add some adhesive to some black cardstock. I'm just using my little Xyron X because these cardstock strips are about 1.5 inches wide. So I'm going to run those through my little Xyron X so they've got adhesive all on one side. And then I just use my bone folder to really press that adhesive into the cardstock and any of the excess into the backing paper there that I'm going to peel away. And then I'm going to be using the Enjoy word die that comes in the Honeybee gift card slots wafer die set. So I had already made sure that it would fit on this width of cardstock, and now I have enough for 3 pieces because I like to stack my sentiments 3 layers deep. So I've got my word die and then the stitch die, and I'm going to run those through my Gemini Junior, and I do my 3 word die cuts, and now they've all got adhesive backing on them, so it's just easy enough to peel off that backing, and I can stack these really quickly and easily together. So I get all of my words stacked, and I always like to usually leave the base word in the excess cardstock there just to hold everything in place. Although this one wasn't too finicky. Some word dies like to be really finicky to play with, but with this one it was pretty simple. So once I've got all 3 layers stacked, I can remove that from the backing paper, and it's got the adhesive on the back of it, so I can just press it into place. I wasn't sure where I was going to put it, so I just kind of moved it around until I decided on this final little like resting spot for the sentiment. And then I stuck the little dots for the eye in place, and in the process managed to lose one of them. So there's only 2 dots on the J. I don't know where the third one went. I kept looking for it, and it just, things always walk off when I am crafting. So anyway, This is the pattern paper that inspired the card. This is from the Doodlebug Cream and Sugar pack that I've been hoarding and have a second pack of and barely ever use because I just love it. But I was looking at this pattern paper and I was like, it just inspired the whole card. So I adhered a full 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece to completely cover my A2 card front, which is some heavyweight white cardstock. And then I took one of the heart patterns from the same pack and I trimmed it down a bit. And then I'm using one of the actual gift card slot dies on it. All it does is cuts the little slots. So it's got these curved ones, or that second die cuts 2 little slits on an angle that you can insert your gift card into. It's just personal preference. And I like how it has kind of basically the outline in the exact size of a gift card. None of that cuts, but it gives a good visual so you know where you're placing things and where things are going to line up. So I cut that from the pattern paper, and then I'm just lining everything up again in my stamp positioner on the inside of the card. And the sentiment is from the Perfect Blend stamp set. There are coffee and tea themed words in there. So I built my sentiment that says sending you a hug in a mug. So I built it all together, closed the lid, inked it up, and then stamped that onto the inside of my card. And then for this piece of pattern paper, I'm going to add adhesive to the back of it, making sure not to add any adhesive to the little areas where those actual slots are, because you don't want to glue those down because then it's not going to hold your gift card. So I'm just applying adhesive to everything but that, as well as to just the very little edges there. So everything is held really well in place. And then I can flip this over and adhere it onto the inside of my card, and a little tiny bit kind of hung over the edge. So I'm just going to flip over my card and just trim off that little tiny bit of excess with my scissors. And then those 2 little notches just pop up a bit and I can slip my gift card into there. So just perfect and fabulous. It makes me happy. And as a final touch, I'm going to adhere the main piece with some foam tape to pop it up. And that finished off today's card. So as always, there will be a link below the video to the blog post with links to all the supplies used. You can check that out below if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.